Welcome to Tommy Solo's Famous Friends. This is where I get to chat with people that I've connected with over the years in the arts and entertainment world. And today I have with me the legendary singer and rockin' artist, Ronnie Hawkins. Welcome to the show, Ronnie.
Well, thank you very much. What's going on there? Anything exciting?
Well, we're still surviving this zombie apocalypse that they call COVID. But other than that, everything's just dickety-boo.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, so Ronnie...
Has any girls been asking about me?
Yeah. All the girls in London want to know when you're coming back.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so...
Boy, they miss me.
So I know, Ronnie, you spent a long, long time in the business, and you were born in Huntsville, Arkansas.
63 years I played.
Yeah.
And you're lucky if you get to play music for 63 years, half-ass entertaining. But I never had to worry about a job. I always had a job.
Yeah, no kidding. You and Larry Mercy. Boy. Yeah. So, Ronnie, I understand that your mother was a teacher and your father was a barber. It doesn't sound like there was all that much musical influence at home. How did you get the inspiration to get into music in the first place?
Well, I tell you, I was the only one that my cousins and my dad and his brothers, they could all play anything. I was the only one that couldn't play nothing, and I'm the only one that wanted to stay in music enough to later on made half a living, 63 years is a long time, and I got to play 63 years because that's all you want to do is when you're an entertainer, show off. Try to show off and pass a girl.
No kidding, yeah. You've been called many things, and some of them we can say in public, I'm sure. Mr. Dynamo, Sir Ronnie, Rompin' Ronnie, and the Hawk. Now, speaking of the Hawk, you had your own label, Hawk Records, for a while.
Yeah, I tried everything because I knew there was so much great Canadian talent, and they couldn't get a job back then. This is before they started using everybody in Canada. A Canadian could not get a job. They were coming up here, and taking everything, but they couldn't get a record deal back then. Now, they own the record company, but back then it was hard to get a Canadian a gig.
I'm always in awe of some of the early acts that really made it in Canada because before we had the whole CanCon, it was tough to get on radio if you were a Canadian.
I'm telling you, they didn't treat Canadians right for a long time. They are now, but they weren't. I nearly got thrown out of Capitol Records office for telling them, you got to start pushing. You're taking all the money out of Canada and putting it in Hollywood or wherever it is, and you're not spending any money on Canadian talent. And I started that whole routine with them, and finally they started doing it. Started having out the Canadian artists a little bit. Not very much, but a little.
Well, I know there are a lot of Canadian artists that have you to thank along the way. I mean, you are quite well known for not only mentoring and getting artists started, but really giving people a leg up. I mean, some of the people have played. Burton Cummings was in the Hawks.
Oh, I tell you what, I was lucky. I've been so lucky with musicians. David Foster, he's the biggest thing in music right now. Nobody's bigger than David Foster. And he just had a son. Boy, he's had 5 or 6 daughters. This time he's got a son. He'll be celebrating.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, and he's up there, too, to be having new kids.
He's the biggest thing in music, David Foster.
Yeah, no kidding.
And he worked in my band. He put a little group together for me, tightened them up. And they were slick. I knew that he was going to be in the big time.
Yeah, really. I mean, some of the more people I talk to in this business, the more I hear stories about how people got started in and around your band. I mean, I interviewed Robbie Lane recently, and one of the first things he talked about was how his band, The Disciples, ended up being your backup band.
Oh, yeah, when the band went out on their own, he was already there because I was promoting them. They were in high school, and when the band left, and then they went with Bob Dylan, I used them. I don't know for how long, but for a while.
Yeah, really. So I understand that if we go way back now, your first gig in Canada was at a club in Hamilton called The Grange, is that right?
No, The Grange. Oh, The Grange was a big spot. No, mine, what was it called then? It's changed name 3 or 4 times since I've been in there. Well, what was that hotel called? But I'll tell you what, when I went in there, when the band pulled in there finally, there was about 6 people in there. And I started that one song, and before I got through the song, they had left. And you can always tell if they're mad if they leave any beer. If they leave one swallow of beer, that means they were really mad, because you don't do that. You know.
Yeah, no kidding.
And boy, that club owner was on the phone with Harold Cutlass. He was a booking agent, right? And he said, "Get these hillbillies out of here. They've run off all my trade. There hadn't been anybody in there since World War II."
So you became a permanent citizen in Canada roughly 1964, but you'd already had some hits before that. Your cover of Hey Bo Diddley was followed by Mary Lou. Now I noticed when I listened to the Bo Diddley version of Hey Bo Diddley, yours is slightly slowed down tempo. Now was that on purpose, or was that just something that the producer or whoever came up with?
You know what? What I did was play songs and see if they would go over in the bars. And if they'd go over real good, then that would be the ones I would try to record.
Yeah, that's always a really good acid test. Yeah. Now you had, over the years, I counted over 40 albums.
I tell you what, I recorded a long time, 63 years. I tell you what, and I was so lucky, I got to record with all the great guys, Jerry Waxler and Tom Dowd. You don't get any bigger name than them. And I got to spend, a whole month with them, Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and 2 weeks in Florida. I got to see Aretha Franklin, one of her recordings. There's somebody who was pretty good. Aretha was a pretty good entertainer.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, now I understand that early on, was it 1959, you were signed with Roulette Records by Morris Levy?
Yeah, Morris Levy. He was the biggest Hebrew gangster in Manhattan. He was the biggest. He knew all the mob, all the Italian bunch, and they did business together,
Yeah, well, that's what Tommy James was recently talking about.
Oh, yeah, Tommy James, but he sold 1 billion records and didn't get nothing. I spent more money than I made. I didn't leave any money much for them. They didn't know me much because I didn't sell enough records of what I spent.
Really?
I spent a lot. They put me all over Europe. I went all over everywhere. They really promoted me. Morris Levy, I learned a lot from him, actually. But he was a gangster, and he cheated everybody.
Yeah, well, from what I've heard about Morris Levy, it sounds like you were kind of lucky to get out when you could.
Oh, shit. I kept him laughing. I kept him going. He had an Italian mobster that looked after him, one of the very last of the old Al Capone mob.
Wow.
I wrote a song called Uncle Charlie Gangster. But, boy, that's a hell of a setup in New York back then. Everybody was getting cheated by every record company, never mind just Roulette.
Yeah, well, I've been called a journeyman musician. That's how Danny Marks from Blues FM refers to me anyway. And so I've been in and around the business for a long, long time. And I was at one point in the early 80s offered a record deal. And I guess lucky or unlucky for me, I had an uncle who was an entertainment lawyer, and he told me not to sign it. And now, when I talk to people like you, and I hear from all these other artists that everybody got that deal.
I tell you what, I'd have signed anything, though. Back then, you want to play so bad and show off so much and try to make it in music, that you'll sign anything when you're young and don't know nothing.
Well, yeah.
They don't do that now because all of them are smart. But back in the 50s, nobody knew nothing. Nobody knew nothing about publishing. That was the secret because the publishing was the money.
Well, that's what happened to Tom Petty as well.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, now he was real smart, though, because he was naive. He didn't realize that what the money was in the publishing. So when he found out, he declared bankruptcy, and I think he was the first major signed artist to do that. And he ended up winning back his publishing. But like you say, just about everybody else got hook, line, and sinker, and here you go, you're on tour, now you owe us a bunch of money.
Well, Bob Dylan had to buy his back. They had him there in Woodstock.
Yeah, it's not an uncommon story.
He had Albert Grossman in them, that bunch. But Bob Dylan, I remember the day Bob Dylan bought it back. Heck, I think he paid $2 million or something. It was more money than I thought you should make doing anything. That's how big the publishing was. And especially Bob Dylan, because Peter, Paul, and Mary, they had #1 hits with his songs. So he was big time before anybody thought he was big time.
Yeah, no kidding. Another guy I talked to, Ken Tobias. You remember?
Yes,
Ken?
yes.
Well, yeah, he was telling me about, he had written that song, Stay a While, that the Bells had a huge international hit with, and I guess he was down in L.A. trying to record a project, and he got a call from, I can't remember, what, BMI, I guess, or whatever, and said, we just wanted to let you know that your song is really charting well. We wondered if you wanted some money. So this is, I think, 1971, and he says, well, can I have $300? I'd like to get a new guitar. and I think they said, well, it's like $10,000 or something like that.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, nobody had anything in the 50s, hardly. I mean, I knew all of them before they got started. Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, all them guys, and they got cheated too.
Yeah, it's a typical story. Yeah, boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so back to your reputation for recruiting and grooming Canadian talent. We all know about the version of the Hawks that featured Rick Danko, Levon Helm, Richard Manuel, Garth Hudson, and I think Robbie Robertson was also in that version, right?
Well, I will tell you, in my opinion, I've had so many great, great musicians in my band. I've been so lucky, it's the fact like David Foster, #1 in the world. I had so many. But the band, after I hired Garth Hudson for 1 year to teach him how to read, write, and arrange and all that stuff, because they were as far as we could go because nobody was out drawing them. And then I actually think that was the best band, rock and roll band, probably in the world at that one time, where we've been playing 6 and 7 days a week, practicing, and Garth putting in all that special stuff. They were a real, real good band, that bunch.
Yes, they were. Yeah, and then you had another version of the Hawks that went on to become Janis Joplin's Full Tilt Boogie Band.
Yeah, that's old John Till.
Yeah,
John
he's
Till
still around.
and them, they were good musicians, too. They were a different breed. They were that breed. And, around, what town is it? Where John Till lived?
Well, John is in Stratford, as far as
Stratford, that's who I was. I started thinking of the Stratford Festival. That's when I first heard of the great actor that just died, playing Cyrano de Bergerac.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, well, I saw John Till a few years ago. I was playing at the Stratford Blues Festival. I think it was 2016, and John Till was playing with B.W. Pauley and Plum Loco.
Oh, yeah. They were good entertainers. That whole bunch was real good musicians. But they had a problem. They were booze drinkers and dopers, young. See, I mean, Richard Manuel been drinking a bottle of whiskey a day since he was 13. So, and John Till, all of them, Kenny Kalmusky, do you know that name?
Sorry,
he was the bass player.
Okay.
But they were a different breed there. They were young, all young, but drinking a lot,
Well, that'll do you in, that's for sure.
Oh, drinkers don't last. Dopers live forever, but whiskers go young.
Yeah, it's really hard to make it big in the music business if you spend all your money on booze.
I'm glad I never took a drink myself.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. Never. Oh, well.
I tell you what, I'm 86 years old, and ain't nobody done what I done and lived to be 86. I'm the only one. Nobody else has ever done it.
Wow. I just had this memory of something that was, I thought, really funny, and it seemed like this was the Juno Awards, okay? And you might know where I'm going with this, but you were in a convertible Cadillac, black Cadillac convertible.
Yes, I remember.
And they drove you out onto the stage. It was you and Carol Baker. And one of the funniest things ever on live TV on the CBC was when you got out and
ripped my pants. all the way up. I mean, and so what I did, I just went on and said, folks, it's a little area up here, but we're going to go ahead. And Carol Baker, she couldn't hardly stop laughing. The driver froze and did not lock the doors. He couldn't get out. He went up there on that stage, and he froze. That stage fright.
Well, there's been a lot of good comedy on the CBC over the years, Wayne and Schuster and all that, but that was one of the funniest things I ever saw on the CBC, I got to tell you.
I tell you what, Canada's always had some great, great talent. A lot of, they have a lot of them Shakespearean actors. I guess Stratford is a place, where you do your Shakespeare and stuff here. But I saw Cyrano de Bergerac, and the actor that did him just died. What was his name? Christopher Plummer.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, Christopher. I've been on TV shows for 40 years that he's been on. He's been around a long time, that old boy.
Yeah, no kidding.
And he was good. I don't know if you ever saw that first version of Cyrano de Bergerac, but, he was big time.
Christopher Plummer was an awesome actor, absolutely. I've seen him in a lot of things over the years.
I want to go back in time now to, at the height of the 1960s peace movement, you invited John Lennon and Yoko Ono to your farm to plan the Peace Festival. Was that the bed-in?
Well, I don't want to tell you something. No, they already done the bed-in. That got me a lot of publicity. When they stayed at my house, I got all my friends back.
Nobody wanted to talk to you.
I took advantage of that. I went all around the world saying, I'm John Lennon's number one man. I don't think I ever saw him again after that, but...
Well, you're right. That was a real popular event. That's for sure.
Oh, gosh. How lucky can you be? John Lennon? They were the biggest act in the world by far then. Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor were second, but they were way down. They were number one around the world. And I got that gig where I went right around the world promoting the Peace Festival. And John Lennon, and boy, I got a lot of publicity.
Yeah.
I told a lot of lies on that tour. I said, John, he wants to come over all the time, but this is the first time I had time for him.
That's too funny. So, our good friend Nick Panasico.
Oh, I love old Mike. I'm telling you what, ain't he a dandy?
Yeah, well, Is he
out of the penitentiary?
What's that?
Is he out of the penitentiary?
Nick out of the penitentiary. He wanted me to ask you for bail money. He said that him and John Rowlands got into some trouble, and they were wondering if I could call Ronnie and ask for bail money.
Yeah. Oh, boy, I tell you what. He's been in the music business all his life, I reckon.
Yeah, pretty much.
He was a number one promotion man.
Yeah, and Nick had a question he wanted me to ask you. What was the deal with London's old City Hall?
I lost the whole thing, but I have not known what I'm doing. Ignorant. They offered me $3 million, it'd be $30 million now, but $3 million, and I was a fool and didn't take it and tried a club in there, and we went broke.
Well, that's sometimes what happens in business, I guess.
Well, I never have been praised as being a real good businessman anyway.
Well, there seems to be a distinction, and there's very few musicians that really have that business acumen. And I talk to a lot of guys that,
I'll tell you one that really does. David Foster, another one, Robbie Robertson. They take care of business, them two guys.
And that's why they're still around.
And that's why there's billionaires.
Yeah.
They took care of business. Well, I'm sure David's got a management company now looking after stuff, but he was still looking after his own stuff. All that business and stuff, signing checks and checking everything. He caught people all the time with checks. He really kept up with it. So he knew what he was doing, David Foster.
Yeah, he's one of a very few. That's for sure.
Yeah, he just had a baby. He had a boy.
Yeah.
He's got 14 girls, but this is the first boy.
Speaking of boys, a number of years ago, this would have been probably middle to late 80s, I was lucky enough to be at Victoria Park in London when you played with your band, and one of your sons was in the band. Was that Robin or Ronnie Jr. that was in the band playing guitar?
Robin.
Robin.
At one time it was both of them, but Ronnie couldn't do it, and Robin stayed in there a long time. He got his own band in London, in Peterborough, but he played with me when he wasn't working.
Right. That was a rockin' band. You guys were loud.
If you ain't too good, play loud. I was always taught that.
Oh, boy. Yeah. But it was a good band, and I was thoroughly entertained by the show.
Oh, I've been lucky to have such great musicians, I'm telling you. And there's been a lot of good musicians in Canada, boy.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they ended up being good. It took them about 10 years to catch up with where we were, but they became great. A lot of great musicians.
Yeah, and well, another notable Hawk was David Clayton Thomas.
Oh, yeah, David Clayton. I used to get him up to sing when he was 14 years old, and then he was sounding good. And I knew he was going to do good, but he was a tough kid. He was tough. He whipped everybody's ass where he worked for, I guess, because, he caught him cheating him, I guess. But hell, he threatened Clive Davis. Clive Davis was the biggest man in music, and I guess he did something wrong. And David Clayton chased him around the desk.
Yeah, well, he's a big guy, too, I think.
I'll tell you something. David Clayton whipped the biggest, roughest bouncer on Young Street. That's why he's only got half a ear bit off. He ain't got all his ear right now, David. But he's done well. He's managed well, and he's super rich. He's done real good, and I'm glad for him.
Well, I see him all the time speaking his mind on social media, and he's still an active mind, that's for sure.
Oh, I'm telling you, he was a tough guy. I'm telling you, he didn't take much nothing. I mean, if you rubbed him wrong, he'd let you know.
Yeah, sounds like it.
One time we was in a bar. He came in to see me, and I'm playing. It's a Nickelodeon. And when I got through playing, there's about 4 or 5 college kids, young college kids, and they were drunk. And they didn't know who we were. They didn't know anything about anything. And it looked like they'd jump on me and Davey. There were about 5 of them, right? And David said, "Wait a minute, boys. This is not fair. You better go outside and get 4 or 5 more guys if you're going to make this a fair fight." I couldn't believe those guys looked at one another. They were just young college kids and drunk. So David Clayton is tough, though. And he's still doing good. I mean, I see him all the time, going somewhere big time. So he's still playing, and he looks good.
Yeah, like I said, I see him all the time on social media and speaking his mind. So you performed at Bill Clinton's inauguration. How did that happen?
I go back a long ways when Bill was governor of Arkansas. And he used to come in and see me play all the time in Arkansas when he was governor. At the club I played at there. And boy, the women went for him. I mean, he was a lady killer. He'd walk in, and he was the only politician I've ever seen before or since that all his security had shoulder-length hair. You don't see shoulder-length hair on a cop.
No, you don't.
But he had him. And he'd come in, and I'm sitting there at a table with 4 or 5 ladies on a break when he came in. And then when he said, "Oh, there's the governor. But you ought to have heard, you couldn't believe the things that they said they'd like to do to him. Caligula would have been ashamed of some of that stuff."
Yeah. Well, I understand that for a while it was said that you had performed for every Canadian prime minister since Diefenbaker as well.
Yeah, that's what they told me. I have. I mean, in the old days, they got me for the kids. Nowadays, they got me for the old people. I went a long ways from playing for the kids to playing for the old people.
Well, that's the cycle, isn't it?
That's it.
Yeah.
I got to see all them prime ministers.
And you won a Juno Award in 1984 for the best country vocalist for your song Making It Again. Now, that was in the era of uptown or new country, so that's interesting that you won for best country vocalist in 1984.
I can't remember anything, but they told me that I have won, I don't know how, but by hook or by crook, every award there is to win in music in Canada. And then they gave me the Order of Canada.
Right, yeah.
Only good-looking boogers get that.
Well, somebody must have thought you were pretty good-looking, I guess, yeah. Yeah.
I tell you what, Canada is the promised land, and it's really been the promised land for me. We got up here just in time, boy, just when Kiefer Sullivan's granddad got the law through for Medicare.
Editor's note, Kiefer Sutherland's grandfather, Tommy Douglas, was the former Premier of Saskatchewan from 1944 to 1961 and leader of the New Democratic Party in Canada from 1961 to 1971. And yes, he did legislate our wonderful healthcare system that we have in Canada. And now back to our interview with Ronnie Hawkins.
Right.
He was a Scotchman, and he broke his leg and couldn't go to the doctor because he couldn't out of the hospital. And his leg grew up a little crooked, and so he always had a limp. And he got Medicare through it. That was 1958.
Right. Yeah.
And so, boy, I tell you what, everybody's taken advantage of it ever since.
Was it Conway Twitty that recommended? Conway Twitty recommended that you move to Canada because it was the promised land for rock and roll.
It was Harold Jenkins when he came up here first. But then he got that record, that Only Make Believe, and it was a big hit. And so they changed the name to Conway Twitty. I don't know, that's his management company did that. I liked Harold Jenkins.
Well, the guys in suits. So you won the Juno in 1984 for Making It Again, and then you were nominated again in 1992 for Let It Rock. And then you talked about some of these awards you've won. You were in 1996. You were honored by the Canadian Academy of Arts and Sciences for your contributions to developing Canada's music industry. And we've already talked about that a little bit, but...
Boy, have I been lucky or what? I tell you what, I got to play music and got to, Canada is a promised land, but it really was a promised land for me because, we had to go in the Army and do all that stuff back then. We came to Canada, and we didn't have to... We had to go in one time, just for basic training, but we didn't have to go anymore if you're out of country. And we stayed in Canada. I didn't want to see any more military. I'd have joined as a prisoner of war if I could have gotten out any quicker.
Yeah, really. Yeah, well, we had a young draft dodger living in our house when I was a kid. When I was 12 years old, we had a fella from, I think it was Canton, Ohio, and he was working as a camp guide up in Temagami, Ontario. And my grandmother said, well, if you want to do some work around my house, you can stay here. And he was very influential because there was a lot of political stuff happening around that time in the late 60s.
Yeah. Jesse Winchester. Robbie Robertson produced his first album.
Okay.
He was a draft dodger, and he was in Canada, and Robbie Robertson produced his first album.
Right. Yeah. Well, there was a lot of heat in the States back then with Vietnam and everything else. So for a young guy like me, young Canadian kid, to spend time with somebody who was, avoiding that war was quite eye-opening.
Well, I tell you what, all them young people, they were smarter than most. They knew that we was in foreign countries, in their country, trying to whip them to take over their country. Boy, that's like Hitler trying to take over countries, It looked bad. The United States looked bad during that Korean War, boy. And then the Middle East, it don't look good.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, the reputation has been tarnished.
Reputation ain't like it used to be when I was a kid. There wasn't anybody in the world any bigger than Franklin Roosevelt. He was the one that took the gold away and gave you paper money.
Right. Yeah.
Boy, my grandparents didn't like that.
Yeah.
Because they'd seen Confederate money go bad, Confederate money was worth way more than regular money at one time. Then all of a sudden it wasn't worth what it weighed,
Well, there's been a lot of changes over time in government and what they've done and so on.
Changes, I'm telling you what, it changes. But that's why everybody wanted gold. Gold has never changed, and it's still probably the only thing to have.
I guess most people who know who Ronnie Hawkins or the Hawk is, we know about your music, but something we don't often think about is that you were also an accomplished TV and film actor. How did you get into acting?
I couldn't do nothing. I just did what they told me. And you know what? I was in about 70 movies, and 69 of them I had a Hawk T-shirt on. Well, I got typecast, or what do they call that? when
Yeah, and you played the biker-looking dude with the Hawk T-shirt.
All the way. I'm telling you what. But I got to see a lot of good actors, but I wore that Hawk T-shirt and was some kind of a biker or something in every one of them.
Speaking of actors, at one point in time, you had Beverly D'Angelo in your band?
Oh, yeah. She was 18 years old. We celebrated her 18th birthday. Oh, but she was a talent. What a talent she is. She's 10 times better than anybody knows she is, or any time better that she's ever done on it. She's done some of them movies with Chevy Chase, whatever and vacation movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, she calls all the time, and and she's real funny. She's really talented too. I got her into her and into Jesus Christ Superstar, because of I knew the cats who were doing. John Bassett was the one who were doing it, and I knew them. I've known them for quite some time, and I got her in it, and that got it started. She's funny. She came up for my last hoorah.
I was going to talk about that, actually, because that happened in September of 2017. And I know that because I was putting on a benefit show at a 1,200-seat church auditorium for the Children's Health Foundation of Southwestern Ontario. And I had planned on having John Rowlands and Nick Panasico there. And they couldn't go to my show, my benefit, because they were going to your big bash.
We had several bashes. But that was a real good one, the last one.
Well, I saw some pictures, and you had, besides Nick and John, there was Chris Christopherson, Beverly D'Angelo, a whole...
they had so many Canadian stars, And we had 36 acts. I don't think there's many shows ever had 36 acts play that day. Played their own way, played free, set up, and I bet not too many people had that done either.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of downplay your own popularity, but that's a testament to it. You had that many people went to your I don't know if you call it.
Very, very lucky. I'm telling you what, I have been so super lucky. My son, for instance, he practiced his ass off, and he probably became one of the best guitar players in Canada. But then there weren't any jobs like I had. I could go in a club and stay for a month.
Yeah.
Right now, you're lucky to get a one-nighter. I paid my way all the way across Canada East and all the way across Canada West once a year, or especially if I was promoting an album. And it took 3 months, because I could stay a full week in a bar, on the road. But that's great because you got time to promote your material, your album. You can go around to, disc jockeys and TV stations and that. If you're there just for one night, you're loading up and leaving. You don't see nothing.
Yeah, well, I know I came to the party a little bit late. I'm a youngster in terms of that. I'm 61, but
oh my God, I've got underwear on older than that.
Yeah, I know. That's what I've heard.
You're a youngster,
but,
61. Nobody's that young anymore.
So when I got into the music business, it was still the six-nighter thing, And as it happened in the mid '80s, I got married the first time, and I quit playing for a while. And boy, was I disappointed when I got back into it, and now they were all down to two-nighters and one-nighters and the odd three-nighter. So back in the day, there was a lot more opportunity for sure when you had six-night gigs across Canada.
And the Canadian musicians today, they're as good as any musicians in the world. I'm telling you what, they got some pickers. And, in the old days, there were just 2 or 3 great pickers, around. And now there's dozens of them. And they're real, real good.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Ellen McElwain. I don't know if you're familiar with Ellen, but she was a pretty big deal as a female slide guitarist, and she hung around with people like Jimi Hendrix, etc. But she said that when she moved to Canada permanently, what she would do is she would travel across the country and pick up a bass player and a drummer for, 2 or 3 weeks at a time, wherever she went. And another friend of mine, Bill Durst, who is the original lead guitar player with Thundermug, still travels, when the world turns back on and we're done with this pandemic, he still travels across Canada picking up a drummer in every town he goes.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, like you say, there's so much talent around. I wouldn't have that much patience.
Listen, you know what? I've got to go, but you can call me anytime you want to. And I can finish up or talk or tell you stories or whatever you want to do.
Just one more thing.
Okay.
I just want to know, is there some place that people can still go to get your music today?
I don't know. I don't keep up with anything anymore. I'm thinking about, and they're trying to get me to, and I might record 2 or 3 songs, Bob Dylan and Gordon Lightfoot songs, and Chris Christopherson.
Well,
I don't know if I get to or not, but the band is offered to, and to play for nothing. All these good session guys there, and Daniel Langlois. Have you heard that name?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, boy, that studio of his, it's the old studio he had before. And they put out some pretty good stuff. And they got a real good bunch of session people there now.
Well, listen, I know you got to go.
I got to go because they're hollering and yelling and honking.
Okay, well, you know what, Ronnie? I'm going to really hope that recording project happens. And I look forward to a time when guys like you and I can sit down face-to-face over a coffee or a beer and tell some lies in person. But until such a time as that, I thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to talk to me.
Thank you very much. And you called anytime because I've got a whole bunch of lies I haven't told you yet.
Well, until next time, Ronnie, thanks so much and cheers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, Ronnie Hawkins is certainly a natural-born storyteller, I'll tell you that. That was a fun interview. Just to let you know, Ronnie has been in an awful lot of TV and movie stuff over the years. He had his own TV series, Honky Tonk, in 1986. He was part of the Bob Dylan documentary Rolling Thunder Review in 2019, in the Red Green movie Duct Tape Forever as a gas station attendant in 2002. He was in Meatballs 3 in 1986. And perhaps most interesting to me was the documentary about his life that was released in 2004 called Still Alive and Kickin'. Here's the thing. In 2002, Ronnie Hawkins was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. And all these years later, he is rocking and rolling and telling his stories and a few lies here and there, as he calls it. And it was such a pleasure to speak with Ronnie. Now, here is Ronnie Hawkins live with the Hawks playing Who Do You Love? Enjoy.
Walk 47 miles of barbed wire. Use a cobra snake for a necktie. Got a brand new house on the roadside, made from rattlesnake hide. Got a brand new chimney made on top, made from a human skull. Come on, Robbie, let's take a little walk. Tell me, who do you love? Who do you love? Who do you love? Who do you love? Eileen took me by the hands and, ooh, you Ricky, I understand. Who do you love? Who do you love? Who do you love? Who do you love? Got a tombstone hand and a graveyard mine. I turned 41, I don't mind dying. Who do you love? Who do you love? Who do you love? Who do you love? I ride a line of town and use a rattlesnake whip. Take it easy, Garth, don't you give me no lip. Who do you love? Who do you love? Who do you love? The night was black and the night was blue. Now on the corner sat an ice wagon too. Bump was hit, Lord, somebody screamed. You should have heard just what I seen. Who do you love?
Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a one-man production, meaning that I've done all the work, including producing, editing, guest acquisition, etc. All rights reserved. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The theme song for Tommy Solo's Famous Friends was written and recorded by Tommy Solo with a little help from my friends in the night crew. And hey, if you like the show, why not subscribe? Until next time, cheers.